Welcome back to the Hubbard's Handmade Shop. I'm Ryan Hubbard. In part one of this dog kennel series, I'm picking out materials for the carcass and putting them together with pocket hole screws. I set up my Craig jig and then dropped the drill bit in there to be able to set the depth. Just put it where you want it, back it off a little bit and tighten the collar, and you're good to start drilling your pocket holes. Next, I decided how long the bars needed to be for the sides and for the front of the kennel, and I'm just cutting those off with an angle grinder and a cutoff wheel. First, I clamped them down into the vise, marked them out, and cut each one off, and then I just cleaned up the ends a little bit so they weren't sharp. I need a quick way to sand these and to clean it up so that I can spray paint them black. So I've just put some screws in my workbench top, and we're just going to hit it with some sandpaper and just kind of keep rolling it as we go and get it smoothed out. Next, I need an easy way to spray paint these without them touching each other. So I'm just going to reach into my new drawer here and get my screw caddy. And we're going to put a bunch of screws sticking out of this leftover scrap of plywood. And then I'm going to put the pipes on those, and it'll hold them in place while I spray paint. Like some kind of weird modern art. These are all of my legs, and I've clamped them together because they are going to have the bars in them, so I'm about to drill the holes. I'm going to space it with one of these, which represents the cross piece that will go in between the two of them. I'm going to mark my first bar at 4 inches. And somehow I lost the footage of drilling all those holes, but nobody wants to see that anyway. So here we're skipping on to assembly, and I've got my pieces already, putting them together with pocket holes, of course. And I'm just starting with the lower assembly, and then we're going to move on and put that together with the bars so that everything fits together all in one piece. The most difficult part was, of course, getting all of this to line up correctly. So I just took my time and made sure my bars were sticking in there straight, then got these end pieces on there at 90 degrees. And then when I went to put it all together, I just kind of took my time again and made sure everything was lined up. And I did have to use a clamp at one point to pull the bars into the other side of the post, but eventually it all just comes together and works out pretty well. So this one here was number 2, and then just one more to go and I'll be able to start assembling the whole thing. You can see the first one that I did over on the floor right there. I didn't think the parts with the plywood were very interesting, so I drilled my pocket holes in the plywood, which is the bottom and the back, and I'm assembling everything together just on the floor here because it's kind of big and unwieldy. And now it's finally starting to look like something. So I got that on the floor, and then I'm just going to go ahead and attach the back, and then it's on to painting next. This kind of seems a little silly, but I need to spray paint on this, and I don't have anything to cover these bars with, so I'm going to try and experiment with tin foil to wrap this around here. And I do like how it conforms to the shape, and it kind of holds its own shape, you know, because it's rigid, so just kind of squishing it on there. And then I'll just use a little bit of tape to secure the ends. And I guess time will tell if this is successful. If I go to remove it and there's white paint on my black bars, then I'll have to redo the black bars by hand. But for now, we'll see if this works. And here's a time lapse of the painting. I use a Wagner paint sprayer, which has been absolutely phenomenal. I've used it for several years now and highly recommend it. I'll put a link down in the description to that model or whatever new model has replaced it. And when I went to take off the tinfoil, I didn't have any white paint on my black bars, so that definitely came out successful. Bought a box of inexpensive tongue and groove flooring, and this is the stuff that's 100% waterproof. There's no wood in it at all, and so I thought that would work out perfect for a dog kennel.
and I just put that in with some liquid nails adhesive.
So we got the barn door hardware in the mail, and one thing that I neglected to account for was the height that this was going to stick up above this if I attach the rail here. So I've made these blocks that we're going to use to drop the rail down so that this rides right below the lid. So I'm attaching those now.
I built this geometric barn door and the top of the crate in a separate video. There was just a lot to it, and it wasn't really related to building the crate, so I didn't want to include it here, but be sure and go check that out by clicking the link in the description.
Got the door hung, and we are about to take it upstairs, and added a magnet here and on the back of the door so that when it slides closed, kind of locks in place.
Because we had to carry this upstairs, the final assembly was done in place, and I'm attaching the handle, and I've attached the top with pocket hole screws, and everything came together really well. I'm pretty happy with it.
The one complaint that I have, and this is just purely aesthetic, is that I somehow did not realize that these would not match, the door and the top. So that kind of sucks, but you know, I imagine that in time this is going to be covered with stuff anyway, so maybe you won't notice it so much. I'm really happy with the door. I'm really happy with the top. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time in the Hubbard's Handmade Shop. Maple.